They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but sometimes the apple falls, rolls down the hill, and rots. Jack Ramsay stood at the podium, looking exactly like his father, the world-famous chef Gordon Ramsay. Same blonde hair, same intense blue eyes, same posture of a man ready to explode. He was wearing a pristine white chef's coat, not because he was working, but because he treats it like a uniform of superiority. He wasn't nervous. He was tapping his fingers on the railing, looking around the courtroom with a sneer, judging everything, the lighting, the smell, the people. "State your name," I said. "Jack Ramsay," he barked. His voice was sharp, loud, and commanded attention, just like his dad's. "Mr. Ramsay," I opened the file. "Case number 911 Chef. Charges, simple assault, disorderly conduct, and destruction of property." I looked at the police report. It was ugly. The report states that last night at Penny's Diner on Broad Street, you ordered a steak and eggs. When the server brought it to you, you didn't just send it back. "I threw it back," Jack interrupted, slamming his hand on the wood, "because it was garbage. It was an insult to the cow. It was rubber. I wouldn't feed that to a cat." "So you admit you threw a hot plate of food at the server?" I asked, looking over my glasses. "The report says the server, a Mr. Diaz, suffered burns on his arm." "He should suffer," Jack yelled, his face turning red. "He brought me a steak that was well done. I asked for medium rare. Do you know the difference, Judge? It's the difference between food and charcoal. He committed a culinary crime. I was just enforcing standards." "This is not a kitchen, Mr. Ramsay," I said calmly. "And Mr. Diaz is not a contestant on a reality show. He is a grandfather working the night shift to pay his rent." "Then he should learn to cook," Jack shot back. "My father built an empire on standards. If you serve slop, you get screamed at. That's how the world works. That's how excellence is made. I did him a favor. I woke him up." He pointed at the empty gallery. "If I serve a bad dish, my dad would bury me. Why should this guy get a pass just because he works in a dump?" I felt the anger rising in the room. Jack Ramsay truly believed that perfection was a valid legal defense for assault. He thought abuse was a teaching tool. "Mr. Ramsay," I said, my voice hardening, "you seem to think that shouting makes you right. You seem to think that a chef's coat gives you the right to burn people." I stood up. "But you are forgetting one thing. In a kitchen, the chef is God. But in this courtroom, I am the one who sets the menu. And today's special," I said, looking him dead in the eye, "is a slice of humble pie." "Officer Quinn," I signaled the bailiff, "secure the doors. Mr. Ramsay wants to talk about standards. Let's show him ours." I signaled to Officer Martinez to lower the blinds. The courtroom plunged into a heavy, anticipatory shadow. The large evidence screen flickered to life, displaying a timestamp, 11:42 p.m. The footage was from a ceiling-mounted security camera inside Penny's Diner. It wasn't the high-gloss, heavily edited production of Hell's Kitchen. It was grainy, raw reality. The diner was a humble place, vinyl booths taped together with duct tape, fluorescent lights that hummed with a greenish hue, and a few weary customers nursing coffees after a long shift. In the center of the frame sat Jack Ramsay. He stood out like a diamond in a coal mine. His white chef's coat was blindingly bright against the dull beige of the diner walls. He wasn't sitting, he was pacing. He was prowling around his table like a tiger that had been fed bad meat. Standing in front of him was the server, Mr. Diaz, a small man hunched over from years of carrying heavy trays, holding a notepad with trembling hands. The audio from the camera was tinny, but Jack's voice cut through the static like a serrated knife. "Look at this," Jack screamed on the video, pointing a manicured finger at the plate of steak and eggs. "Just look at it. Are you blind? Are you stupid? Or do you just hate food?" Mr. Diaz tried to speak, his voice barely a whisper. "Sir, I can ask the cook to—" "The cook?" Jack laughed, a cruel theatrical sound that made the other customers flinch. "You don't have a cook back there. You have a vandal. You have a sabotage artist. This isn't a steak, you donut. This is a hockey puck with depression." On the screen, Jack grabbed a fork and stabbed the meat aggressively. "It's dry," he shouted, holding the fork up to Mr. Diaz's face. "It's drier than the Sahara. If I eat this, I'll die of dehydration. And the eggs? Look at the yolk. It's broken. It's bleeding all over the plate like a crime scene. Did you drop it? Did you play football with it before you brought it out?" "I'm sorry, sir," Mr. Diaz apologized, reaching for the plate. "I'll take it back." And that was the moment the chef persona crossed the line into criminal violence. As Mr. Diaz reached for the plate, Jack slapped his hand away, hard. "Don't touch it," Jack roared. "You don't get to hide the evidence. You need to learn." Jack picked up the plate. It was heavy, ceramic, and steaming hot. He didn't hand it back. He didn't push it away. He pulled his arm back and launched it. The plate flew across the short distance and smashed into Mr. Diaz's chest. Hot grease, runny eggs, and heavy ceramic shards exploded everywhere. Mr. Diaz stumbled back, clutching his chest, falling against the counter. You could see the steam rising from his shirt where the hot oil had soaked in. He wasn't screaming. He was in shock. He just stood there, shaking, looking at the mess on his uniform. But Jack Ramsay didn't rush to help. He didn't gasp. He stood there, hands on his hips, shaking his head in disappointment. "Pathetic," Jack spat on the video. "Absolutely pathetic. Look at the mess you made. You can't even catch a plate. Get out of my sight. And tell the chef he's fired." The video cut to black. The silence in the courtroom was suffocating. I have seen bar fights. I have seen domestic disputes. But this was different. This was calculated cruelty disguised as standards. I slowly turned my chair to face the defendant. Jack Ramsay was leaning back, picking a piece of lint off his pristine white coat. He didn't look ashamed. He looked bored. He looked like he had just watched a rerun of a show he didn't like. "You watched that," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed anger. "You watched an old man get burned by hot grease. You watched him fall, and you didn't even flinch." Jack shrugged, locking eyes with me. "I watched a service failure, Judge. The man has no reflexes. If you can't handle the heat, literally, get out of the kitchen." "Mr. Diaz is 68 years old," I said, reading from the victim's statement. "He has arthritis in his hands. He works that night shift to pay for his wife's medication. He isn't a Michelin star aspirant. He serves coffee and eggs to truck drivers." "And that's the problem with this country," Jack interrupted, standing up and pointing a finger at me. "Mediocrity is celebrated. You make excuses for him. Oh, he's old. Oh, he has arthritis. So what? If I served a plate like that to my father, he would have thrown me out the window. Standards don't care about your arthritis, Judge. The customer is king, and I was the king in that diner." "You were not a king," I snapped. "You were a tyrant." "Mr. Ramsay," I continued, leaning forward, "you seem to confuse passion with abuse. Your father built a career on being tough, yes, but he was teaching professionals who signed up for the pressure. Mr. Diaz did not sign up to be your punching bag." "He signed up to serve food," Jack yelled back. "And he failed. I gave him instant feedback. It was a lesson. He won't serve a broken yoke again, I guarantee you that." "You think you taught him a lesson?" I asked, looking at the burn photos in the file. "You burned his skin. You humiliated him in front of his neighbors. You didn't teach him how to cook. You taught him to be afraid of rich boys in white coats." "I am not a rich boy," Jack sneered. "I am a Ramsay. We are culinary royalty. We have sauce in our veins. You wouldn't understand. You probably eat microwave dinners." I took a deep breath. The arrogance was impenetrable. He truly believed that his last name gave him diplomatic immunity from basic human decency. He thought he was living in a TV studio where the producers would edit out the assault and just leave the witty insults. "You talk about sauce in your veins," I said quietly. "You talk about royalty. But let me tell you what I see. I don't see a chef. A chef feeds people. A chef nurtures people. A chef respects the ingredients and the staff." I pointed at the screen, now dark. "I see a spoiled child throwing his dinner on the floor because it wasn't what he wanted. You are throwing a tantrum, Jack, and in the real world, tantrums have consequences." "You want to talk about kitchen standards?" I asked, a plan forming in my mind. "You want to talk about how a kitchen should be run? Well, you are in luck, because the state of Rhode Island runs a very large kitchen. It serves 3,000 meals a day, and they are always looking for help." Jack's eyes lit up. "A kitchen? You're sending me to a kitchen? Fine, I'll run it. I'll whip those donkeys into shape. I'll have them making beef Wellington by Friday. I'll turn it into a 5-star establishment." I smiled. It was a cold smile. "Oh, you won't be running it, Mr. Ramsay, and you certainly won't be making beef Wellington." "Officer Quinn," I turned to the bailiff, "do we have the contact for the Providence homeless shelter? Specifically, the dish pit?" Jack's smile vanished. Dish pit? Wait. I don't wash dishes. I plate. I expedite. I create. Not anymore, I said. You broke a plate. Now you are going to learn how hard it is to clean one. The color drained from Jack Ramsay's face. The term dish pit is a curse word in the culinary world. It is the dungeon. It is where the heat is highest, the smell is the worst, and the glory is non-existent. Dish pit? Jack stammered, backing away from the podium. You cannot be serious. Judge, I am a saucier. I am a creator of flavor profiles. Putting me on the dish station is like using a Ferrari to plow a field. It is a waste of talent. It is a correction of character, I replied. You treated a human being like trash because his service wasn't perfect. Now you are going to deal with the trash. I pointed to his chest, to the pristine, bright white chef's coat with his name embroidered in gold thread. And before you go, I added, we need to address your attire. My whites? Jack brushed the lapel proudly. What about them? They are custom-fitted, Egyptian cotton. Take it off, I ordered. Jack froze. Excuse me? That coat, I explained, is a symbol of respect. It is worn by leaders. It is worn by people who feed others. You are not a leader, Jack. You are a bully, and you are definitely not feeding anyone. You are throwing food at them. You have disgraced that uniform, I said, my voice heavy. You haven't earned the right to wear it in my courtroom. Take it off. Jack looked at the gallery, his face flushing red. To a chef, removing the jacket in public is a form of demotion. It is shameful. But I'm wearing a t-shirt underneath, Jack mumbled. It's an undershirt. I don't care, I said. Officer Quinn, assist Mr. Ramsay if he has trouble with the buttons. Officer Quinn stepped forward. Jack quickly began undoing the buttons, his hands shaking with rage and embarrassment. He peeled off the expensive white jacket, revealing a sweaty gray undershirt. He bundled the coat into a ball, refusing to fold it, and threw it on the table. Without the armor of his chef persona, he looked smaller. Just an angry young man in a t-shirt. Now, I said, Officer Quinn has your new uniform. Quinn reached behind the desk and pulled out a heavy, thick, industrial-grade rubber apron. It wasn't white. It was a dull, ugly olive green. It was stiff and smelled of rubber. Along with it, he produced a pair of elbow-length yellow cleaning gloves. What is that? Jack curled his lip in disgust. It looks like something you wear to handle toxic waste. It's a pot wash apron, I informed him. Because that is your new station. You are sentenced to 200 hours at the shelter. And let me be clear about your duties, I continued, opening the sentencing log. You are not allowed to touch the food. You are not allowed to garnish. You are not allowed to taste for seasoning. You're going to stand at the 3-compartment sink. You're going to scrub the burnt oatmeal pots. You're going to scrape the dried lasagna off the baking trays. And you're going to unclog the drain when people don't scrape their plates correctly. Jack gagged slightly. Unclog the drain? That's vile. Do you know what kind of bacteria is in a commercial drain? I'm sure Mr. Diaz knew what kind of bacteria was on your shoe when he had to clean up the eggs you threw on the floor, I countered. But Judge, Jack pleaded, desperation setting in. My hands, my palate. If I ruin my hands with steel wool and harsh chemicals, I won't be able to feel the texture of a scallop. You are ruining my career. You ruined your own career the moment you decided you were too important to be kind, I said. And here is the best part, I smiled. You know how your father likes to scream? You know how he yells, "It's raw," or calls people donkeys when they make a mistake? Jack nodded slowly. Well, the head cook at the homeless shelter is a woman named Mrs. Higgins. She is 70 years old. She doesn't scream. She doesn't swear. But if you leave a single speck of grease on a plate, she will make you wash every single dish in the stack again, in silence. She has higher standards than your father, Jack, because she isn't cooking for cameras. She is cooking for survival. I gestured to the rubber apron. Put it on. Jack picked up the heavy rubber loop and pulled it over his head. It hung awkwardly on him, stiff and unyielding. He pulled on the yellow gloves. He looked ridiculous. The prince of the kitchen had become the king of the suds. I look like a janitor, Jack whispered, looking at his yellow hands. No, I corrected him. You look like someone who is finally going to do an honest day's work. Get scrubbing, chef. 3 days later, I decided to check on my new executive dishwasher. The Providence Community Shelter is not a quiet place. It is loud, hot, and smells of boiled cabbage and disinfectant. It is a place of survival. I walked into the kitchen, Through the clouds of steam rising from the industrial dish machine, I saw him, Jack Ramsay. The arrogant young man who had thrown a plate at a server was unrecognizable. His hair was wet with sweat, plastered to his forehead. His face was streaked with grime. The yellow rubber gloves were up to his elbows, and he was wrestling with a gigantic charred soup pot that looked big enough to boil a human in. He was scrubbing. Hard. Scrape. 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 Standing next to him was Mrs. Higgins, the 70-year-old volunteer. She wasn't yelling. She was barely 5 feet tall, but she was terrifying. I watched as Jack tried to put a tray of plates into the sanitizer machine. "Stop," Mrs. Higgins said softly. She pointed a shaking finger at a single plate. There was a tiny, microscopic spot of dried gravy on the rim. "But Mrs. Higgins," Jack panted, wiping sweat from his eyes, "it's just a speck. The machine will get it." "The machine rinses, Jack. You clean," she said firmly. "That plate goes to a man who hasn't eaten in 2 days. He deserves a clean plate. Do the whole rack again." Jack looked like he wanted to scream. He looked like he wanted to channel his father and shout, "Bloody hell!" But he didn't. He looked at the line of hungry people waiting in the dining hall. He looked at Mrs. Higgins. He slumped his shoulders. "Yes, chef," he whispered. He pulled the rack back and started scrubbing again. I stepped forward. "Good afternoon, Mr. Ramsay," I said. "How is the service going?" Jack jumped. He spun around, soap suds flying. He looked exhausted. His hands were shaking, not from rage this time, but from muscle fatigue. "Judge," he gasped, This is impossible. This oatmeal, it's like cement. Who burns oatmeal like this?" "It happens when you are cooking for 400 people on a budget of 0, I said. "It's not risotto, is it?" "No," Jack admitted, looking at the gray water in the sink. "It's definitely not risotto." "You know," I said, leaning against the stainless steel counter. "Mr. Diaz, the man you burned, he has done this job for 40 years. He stands on his feet for 10 hours a day, dealing with difficult customers, cleaning up messes he didn't make, and he does it with a smile. You did this for 3 days," I continued, "and you look like you've been in a war." Jack looked down at his yellow gloves. He looked at the blisters forming on his thumbs. "I didn't know," Jack said quietly. "I didn't know the water was this hot. I didn't know the pans were this heavy." "That is because you have only ever seen the finished product," I told him. "You see the steak on the table. You don't see the sweat in the kitchen. You thought you were royalty, but in here, you are just the guy who cleans the mess." Suddenly the service bell rang. Ding. "Jack, we need plates," Mrs. Higgins called out. "The family service is starting." Jack didn't argue. He didn't complain. He grabbed a stack of hot, clean plates. "Coming, chef," he yelled. He ran to the service window. I watched him hand a plate to a young mother holding a baby. She smiled at him. A tired, genuine smile. "Thank you," she said. Jack froze. He looked at the woman. He wasn't getting paid. He wasn't getting a Michelin star. He wasn't getting applause. He was just getting a thank you for a clean plate. For the first time since I met him, Jack Ramsay smiled back. It wasn't a smirk. It was a real, human smile. "You're welcome," Jack said. "Enjoy the meal." He walked back to the sink, picked up the steel wool, and went back to war with the burnt pot. I walked out of the kitchen, leaving him to his work. The steam swallowed him up again. I looked into the camera for the final verdict. "We live in a culture obsessed with status," I said. "We want the chef's coat. We want the title. We want to be the boss. But true leadership isn't about how loud you can scream at the people below you. True leadership is serving them. If you think you are too good to wash a dish, then you are not good enough to run a kitchen. Respect the hands that serve you, because you never know when you might be the one wearing the apron. And remember, the story you just watched is a fictional drama created for educational purposes. While we used real names and personas to illustrate the point, this specific event did not happen. But the lesson remains real. Treat everyone with respect, no matter who your father is. I'm Judge Frank Caprio. Order up.